And Tim is going to introduce our tonight's speaker. Thanks.
Thank you. Hey everybody, I'm Tim. I'm an alcoholic. Kellin, it took a while to get him scheduled the way he needed to be scheduled. And here he is. He showed up. He came a couple of weeks ago to get a sample of what we do here. But I go to meetings with him in Gainesville just about every Saturday morning. And he's been really putting in the work. He's on the GSR level for our group, and he's constantly going down to Dublin and participating in our group conscience. And I really appreciate Kellin for all the great work he does with newcomers and old guys like me. You ready?
Ready.
Let's go.
Hey everybody, my name's Kellin and I'm an alcoholic. And Tim kind of told that story a little different than I remember it. Tim's a great guy, by the way. You talk about somebody that puts in service work. I mean, at our group and here and what he does. I mean, he walking billboard for The Rock and really promotes this program. And he's a special person, and I really care a lot for him and respect his recovery. But he asked me in June if I would tell my story the week of 4th of July. And, you know, I mean, it was the first time I've been asked in a while. And, my immediate reaction was like, oh, my God, no. You know, I mean, and then I realized I had something to do 4th of July with my kids. And so I said, hey, Tim, I really don't want to put you on the spot. I said, but I can't commit right now. And as a good people-pleasing alcoholic, I said, but I'll be glad to do it some other time. And he goes, how about September the 29th? And we got to the 9th, but I went from 1 week to 3 months of having to wait to tell my story. It's bad enough when someone asks you on Monday to do it Friday, but to have to think about it for 3 months. But I'm honored and blessed to do this. My sobriety date is March the 10th, 2020. I am a member of the Fresh Air group in Gainesville, Georgia. It's at the Hawk Club. And I am with my story, this is my story, and I hope to be able to stay in the truth with it. Sometimes I live in fantasy world and create this ego that I wasn't, so, but let me say something, because I love AA, and I respect the singleness of purpose of alcoholism, and, but I'm an addict too. I mean, I'm addicted to anything that removes me from the pain and the emotional, the fear, insecurities. And for a long time, I really had a problem with the uniqueness that I was an addict, because drugs were first in my life. I love alcohol. Alcohol was like Gatorade to my drug addiction. It was the gateway of, I'm not going to do it tonight, I'll just have a few drinks. And I always ended right back at the same house in the same place. And alcohol is very much in my story. But for a long time, I tried to identify as an addict in Alcoholics Anonymous, or, I went to the other fellowships. I even went to specific drug fellowships for my drug of choice, because for me, in the beginning, I needed to talk to someone that knew specifically what it was to Jones like me, or to stay up 5 days with no sleep and no water, and to be crazy and just paranoid. And so I went to some other fellowships, but the rock of my program, and I'm founded in, is Alcoholics Anonymous. The 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, the recovery I find in Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I had I don't know if this is going to be funny or not, but I was dealing with that with my sponsor one time. I'm an addict, I'm an alcoholic. He goes, man, you know the difference between an alcoholic and an addict? And I was like, what? He said, an alcoholic will steal from you, but an addict will steal from you and then help you look for it. Man, I don't know where that wallet went, but let me look for it for you, So anyway, that's just a little. And so I was like, oh, because I'm both of them. But anyway, so it's all about escaping reality. It's all about, not living in the pain. But so my story, I won't touch on specifics, but just wanted to share that. I'm addicted to more, and alcohol is the primary drink of my choice. But I was born and raised in Hall County, Gainesville, Georgia. I was the youngest of three. I grew up in a upper middle class family. Back then, Gainesville was very small. And my mother taught dance and created a dance company. My father he played football at Georgia from 48 to 52. He was a Wally Boys, and he was a big ball player. We all played ball. But he was my coach, and I grew up in a very close-knit family. But I was the youngest of three of 10 years. So when I got to be 10, they were gone. They were out of high school and gone. So I was kind of like an only child in many senses of the word, and never had a very close relationship with my brother and sister. I mean, they came home for holidays, and still don't have a very close relationship. Partly for some of the things I did, but I was more like an only child. I was the I think, my mom, after 10 years, it was like, And I said after I became a pretty rambunctious kid, I bet she felt that way, but, anyway, but my earliest memory, I didn't come from a drinking family. My father said he drank once in college and he got sick as a dog, and he's like, why the hell would you do that again? That just was his thing. And my mother, was not a drinker. They were both very active, and so I never really had any introduction to alcohol or anything in my life. But I will tell you that the first time I was introduced to it, it was exactly what I needed to fulfill, feeling normal. And probably at the age of 13, we moved from an area that was it was a working class area to, my dad got this great opportunity to buy this house in this very affluent neighborhood. It had been abandoned for many years. It was a big house that needed a lot of work. And I only say that because as an only child in a big house where there's two different entrances, and my parents are a lot older and they went to bed at 10, I was able to really, turn on the partying. And what happened, though, I moved into an area that I did not feel like I belonged in. These people that lived there were at that time what we called old money, you might say, and I always felt like I was less than. I was always trying to prove myself to the kids in that socioeconomic area that I was as good as they were, and I just always felt like, my clothes weren't as nice. They were, I had a car that was left over from my brother, and they had new cars, and it was tough. It was just kind of tough at that age, at 13, trying to blend in with your peers and feel like they accepted you for who you are. And that's where, I look back at pictures and irritable, restless, and discontent. My entire childhood, I just felt like I was different. I didn't match up my insides didn't match up to your outsides. And everywhere, clothes didn't even fit me right. And I know this kind of sounds corny, but, I had a best friend. He'd buy a pair of Levi's and hiking boots and a shirt, and I'd be like, man, that guy looks good. I'd put them on, they'd be too baggy, too tight, too short. My socks didn't feel right. I just wasn't comfortable in my own skin at all. I mean, and I always felt like that I just had this, I was just uncomfortable. And that led to, in that area, that's when I first got introduced to alcohol and drugs, around 13. And I'm not one of those guys. I love it when people say, the first time they took a drink of alcohol, they could taste it on their tongue and it went through their belly and it hit their toes and came back up, and they're like, oh my God, that was not me. I hated beer. I mean, but what I would do is we would drink these little thing called Miller Ponies in an 8-pack, but because they get ice cold, and I figured if it was ice cold, I might could drink it down. But I'd even hide and pour it out where nobody could see me, because I just couldn't. I learned to love beer, but at this point, I just couldn't do it. I did find out real quick that liquor was a lot easier to drink. And so taking a big swig of liquor was like trying to drink one beer or two beers, and I was like, hell, this is the way to go, you know. So, but I will say with my other substances, for me, and whatever it was, you know, I have two boys, and one of them is medicated pretty intensely, and you know, my mother used to I used to come in from school batshit crazy, excuse the language, and my mother would say, you go outside and climb a tree or dig a hole or run around, but you don't come back in this house until you're worn out. When I ring the bell for dinner is when you come home. And that's how they dealt with it. I don't even know if we had ADHD or ADD or BBB or whatever back then. There was no medication. It was just, you know, you just suck it up or go. And so when drugs came into my life, it was like medicine. It quietened my brain. You know, it made my endorphins explode, and that I can say the first time I did my drug of choice, I was like, oh my God, I found God. This is it. You know, I mean, it really was what my brain loved to have, and I learned that taking that drug with alcohol and this other one, I mean, it was just a combination of complete oblivion. I did drink to black out the first time. I never, ever have ever been a person. I've kidded myself and said, yeah, man, I just want to go out and have a dinner with, you know, a glass of wine or a couple of beers. And I've never been that kind of drinker. I've pretended to be that kind of drinker, but I drink to get drunk, and I drink to forget. And that was the way it was for me. I'll quickly jump through. I went to Gainesville High School. I played ball, quit ball because I wanted to party more, and went to Gainesville High School, got in a bunch of trouble at Gainesville High School for drinking and drugging in school. And, you know, I heard a guy say the other night that there's two kinds of alcoholics. I think there's probably more, but he said there's an alcoholic that knows he's an alcoholic, but he really tries hard to keep his stuff together. You know, he hasn't gotten in a lot of trouble, has a job, gets married, has kids, dying inside, you know, living in his garage drinking, but he's able to maintain a life and not lose a house. And then there's the other kind that from the very beginning they get in trouble. You know, it's like, I mean, they just don't care. And I didn't care about repercussion. I once, talking about being an alcoholic, I once, when I was young, the drinking age was still 18 in Hall County, and when I turned 17, it went to 19 and 20 and 21. But when I used to say I wasn't an alcoholic, I had 3 DUIs before I was even legal to drink. So I must have a drinking problem. And 2 of them I got carried home by the sheriff, and the third one I think I got, this was before Mothers Against Drunk Driving, so I think I got a $500 fine and 30-day suspension. But because of that, I got sent away to school, and I ended up in a military academy in Virginia. And for the first time in my life, I didn't have to compare myself to what other people were wearing in school or what the cliques were, or was I a jock, was I, you know, a rock and roll guy, or was I prep? You know, I was always trying to figure out, my whole life I've searched for an identity. You know, I rode motorcycles for a while, and I was going to be a biker, and before that, you know, I played ball, I was going to be this athlete, and I thought, well, maybe I'll play golf, or, you know, I mean, and I've always searched for an identity, and the only identity I've ever known is that person that drank and drug. I mean, that was who I was, and everybody knew it. And I went to military school, back to that, and it was the first time ever that, you know, I thrived in it. I loved it because they told me when to get up, they told me what to eat, how to eat, we all wore uniforms, and it sounds kind of backwards. I mean, I've been I've been incarcerated, and it's the same story, but it's not. I mean, it's completely. I mean, I could leave. You know, I mean, they tell you the same thing in jail, but military school was great. And it was during the Reagan's years, and I really wanted to go to West Point or the Citadel, and I got a accommodation from a retired general to go to West Point, and didn't take it. Another part of my validation in life has always been having a relationship. To be by myself, which is right now probably the first time, and I'll tell you this: I've had five. I'm on my fifth white chip, and I've been married 4 times. So my story was I pick up a white chip, get sober, get married, get drunk, get divorced. Wow. And so I've done it 4. I'm on my 5th one. I have no plans to make it a 5th wedding, but I always needed someone to validate me as a man. If I had a woman with me, beside me, that made me feel whole, it made me think that I was okay, that I was loved, that I had somebody, and I needed that in my life. And because of that, I didn't go to West Point. I had met a girl, and she was going to a school. I went to a school and joined a fraternity at that time. This was back in '86, and that's where I learned. That's where draft beer became my best friend. I mean, I will be honest with you, it was college before I learned how to drink beer, good beer, and from there it was another oblivion. And I went to school at a school in Macon for a while, and then it was always for me geographical changes. If I broke up with her and met someone else, they went to school, I went to school. I was always chasing that identity. I just was not okay with who I was. It's like if I get to, I would have this idea that if I could just get to this place, I'd be okay. And then I'd get to that place and I'd realize it wasn't that great. I was never where I thought I needed to be. So it was always chasing another opportunity. I went to a couple of different colleges, and I went to a college up in North Carolina and was there 2 years, only went 1 semester, and my dad at that point was still paying for college, and I wasn't going, but he was sending me the tuition checks, and I was telling him I was going, and he called the president of the school, and they told him that I wasn't going. So he called me home, and I forged all the letters and the documents and the transcripts, and even though he was told by the president of the university that I wasn't going, I convinced him that I was going, so he paid for another semester, and finally came up and packed me up and sent me off to my first rehab. It was the first time that I was really introduced to AA and the 12 steps, and the seeds were planted, but I wasn't ready. And my life would be a series of stretches of success and then failures. I'd get a great job and I'd be promoted and I'd get to be, whatever, senior sales advisor, and then I'd just not show up for 2 weeks. I could really put together some time without drinking, but I would always crash and burn. I mean, it would never fail. I would, just go out and completely, and I went from job to job to job, and that was kind of a blessing and a curse, because I could be completely out of my mind for, weeks at a time, and then somehow pull it all together, shave, take a bath, put on a nice coat and tie, and then go out and get a job. When people really, when I would finally come to my terms and tell people, how bad it was for me, they'd say, "Oh man, you're okay. You got a job, you're working." And sometimes I wanted to be the guy that was homeless, living underneath the bridge, which I've done that too. But I wanted to look like I was hurting, because nobody believed me. Because I could always pull it together and be successful. And like I said, after school, this was probably in '98. I got married, and all of the mother of my children, which is my third wife, she has 27 years of sobriety. Both of my other wives are in sobriety now, and the fourth one should be, but she's not. But somehow I was able to find people that would put up with my crap for long enough to, to stay married for a while, and it's almost like I didn't pick victims, but I picked the people that would allow me to behave the way that I behaved. And that was my life. I was still trying to figure out what, I used to meet people that from a very early age, they knew exactly what they wanted to do. They wanted to be a football player, they wanted to be a doctor, or they wanted to be a musician. I wish I had something that I could have been passionate about like that, but I went from job to job, to career, to marriage to marriage, and just always searching for who I was. And drugs and alcohol, were the only thing that I cared about. I mean, I had such a love affair with it that nothing else in my life was important. I could lose a job, get another job until I couldn't, but the only thing in my life that was important was that I could drink and use. But I got in 2004, when I married Kim, who I had 2 boys with. I was in a rehab program then. She was 3 years sober, and I really thought I had it. I really, for the first time in my life, thought that, and I was in AA, and I was doing the deal, and I was sponsoring, and I had, we had 2 boys. We were building a business together, and it was the first time in my life that I had been probably more than a year or something without having a drink or a drug. And so after about 4 years in the program, I just knew I would never drink again. I just thought, after 4 years, you'll never drink, you'll never drug. You got 2 boys, you've got a successful business, your wife's in recovery. We got busy. I just stopped going to AA. I just stopped going. I just had convinced myself that I would never drink or use again. And this was probably 2002, and because my first son was born in 2004, and my second 2006. And at that point, I was in the development business, doing some real estate stuff, and we had a staffing agency. My wife was the talent with that, but we had a work employment agency, and it was really doing well, and my development company was doing well. And then 2009 hit, and that's when the real estate market crashed, and the banks, everything fell apart, and I lost it all. I had really put a lot of money into this project and kind of leveraged the other business against it, and when it all came down, my wife was like, what in the hell have you done? You're going to cost us everything. And so we pulled me out of this business because I was being sued for this business, and it was a mess, financial mess. And needless to say that it was more than I could handle. And without the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, the 12 steps, the sponsor, being accountable and being in this program with people like you, the quickest thing I needed to do was to pick up a drug, and I did. And it was bad. And my wife, because I really prided myself. I used to tell my story, I have 2 boys, and they've never seen me drink a drug, and they never will. There I was with 2 boys that were seeing their dad completely out of his mind. I hear a lot of people say sometimes, hey man, I'm doing this for my kids, my boys, or, I'm doing this for my kids, and it did not work for me. If you don't do it for yourself, and you're not in a program of Alcoholics Anonymous, it will succumb to even kids or family. But she put me in Peachford in Atlanta on the stave unit. I was a menace to myself, and I stayed there and got clean for a while. I got out, and this was probably 2014. My dad, who was my hero, had dementia and Alzheimer's, and we sold our house and moved into their house to help take care of him. And I was sober, and she was sober, and I was at the Hawk Club. My first meeting at the Hawk Club was 1989. I've been here in NABA probably in you know, in the early 90s to this club. So I've been doing this a long time, and I did have, you know, 8 years of sobriety, but I completely fell out of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, like I said, and this happened. And when my dad got sick and we moved up there, it was too much for us to handle. We were still dealing financially. Having two mothers in a house, my wife at the time, she struggled with that, and we ended up getting a divorce, and that was in 2014. And tried to she's still sober, and I was trying to be sober. We divorced. I completely removed myself from the company. She took it all, and it's all hers. And anyway, so this is the beginning of the end for me. I moved out, and I actually did some things that were very illegal. And I guess since the statute of limitations have ran out, I can talk about it. But I had faked a break-in and at my parents' house, and completely out of my mind. And my wife and kids had already moved out, and I was still living at this house with my mom. My dad had passed and was, you know, back using and drinking. And I don't know. I just came in one day and, you know, kicked the door down and went through the house and rummaged it and had removed a lot of my items and called the police and thought they'd kidnapped my mother, and I was running through the house with a gun, and, you know, it was just bizarre, and it was crazy. And the cops came and they went and talked, and they said, yeah, there was a white van parked down there. They saw some people running through the backyard. There's even an old, and I was like, damn, okay, you know, because it was me. I'd hid the combat boots in the basement that I kicked the door in, and you know, I had taken pictures of all the watches and stuff, and so anyway, Dad was in the insurance business, and he had a really good policy, and I filed the insurance claim and got a lot of money, and took that money and bought another house. It's funny, it's not. I mean, I think this is the first time I've been able to tell that story because it's been over 7 years, so only my sponsors heard that before now. I heard a guy one time that burnt down his car dealership, and he told his story, and he was like, I can tell it because my attorney said the statute of limitations was out, and I was like, that's kind of how I feel about this. But it was a lot of money. It was close to six figures, and I bought a house and put a pool in, and I didn't have a job. I just thought I was going to live like a king, and got into the used car business, which, if any of you guys know that, that's the world's last horse trading business that's legal. I mean, if you've ever done the pay here, buy here stuff, and it almost should be illegal, but there's a lot of money to be made, and so I got into that business, and all those guys party, and I met this little girl that was at the front counter and just was smitten with her, and she was smitten with me, and much, much younger than me, and I thought it would be a good idea to get married. So we did. At that time, and this was 2016, at that time, I was the fiduciary and the estate, executor of the estate, and the Veterans Administrative fiduciary of my dad's estate. It went to my mother. My brother and sister have been gone. I mean, they've been gone for years. They're in St. Simons in Colorado. And they were like, they just didn't have any clue. Put Mom in a little house, and that's not a good position to be in when you're completely unaccountable for anybody checking on, knowing where the money's going. After I ran through the insurance fraud money, I ran through a bunch of money of my mother's for my drug and alcohol use. And listen, I love my mother. She's 94, and I see her every weekend. She's the reason when I put the gun in my mouth, the reason I didn't pull the trigger was because I didn't want my mom to cry. I mean, I love my mom. I love dope more, you know. I love dope more. And I ran through a bunch of money, and my brother ended up finding out about it, and it was a bad deal. Yeah, the elderly victims advocate came after me, and my mother was, you know, crying. You know, I gave him the money. I told him he could have it. So, you know, you know, she didn't want anything to happen to me, and God bless her. And we worked it out, you know, with a promissory note, and that's been part of my financial amends for a long time. But you know, and I've been paying her back in a living amends too, because as I said, my brother and sister aren't here, and without, you know, I try to do as much as I can for her. I love her to death, and I'm sorry. And it's, you know, I'm a real Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. You know, people say, Kellin will give you the shirt off his back, man. He'll buy you a meal. And I used to. I used to love to go down to Atlanta, right down Ponce, North Highland, and right in that Georgia Tech area, man. I'd stay for weeks, you know, and I'd be buying everybody everything, you know, because I thought if I was giving people stuff down there, I was an okay guy. But I'll lie to you and steal from you too. I mean, on the dope, you know, I'm a liar, a cheat, and a steal, and a thief, and it's so bizarre because, you know, when I'm sober, that's not me. I mean, I really am a good guy. I just have a disease of alcoholism. You know what I mean? And I've seen so many people, even in jail, which I'll get to real quick, and then that just made that one mistake. You know, the good people, man, and they just made that one mistake, and it frightens me to think that could have been me. But all this was happening between 16 and 20. So I'm between 16 and 20. And I was really out of my mind. I mean, they say, you know, insanity. I was living in trees, and I had built a fort in the attic and would drill holes in the back of the house because I thought people were coming. I mean, I had drank and used myself to complete. I just thought I was going to die. Because I had all this guilt about that money, I had all this fear about that insurance fraud. I had, when I married Jada was her name, I decided that my boys would be better off with their mom. Their mom's, that business turned out to be a very successful business, and I just thought, they don't need to be around me. I'm using and drinking. So from 2016 to 2020, I probably lived 5 miles away from my sons. And I didn't even see them. And they're the love of my life today. But I completely justified them being with their mother and being in a private school and being okay. And she had remarried and he was a jerk, but whatever. But, you know, he's an okay guy. I'm working on that on my men's. But and I just, you know, I mean, I remember waking up one day and realizing I'd missed my son's birthday. I didn't call him. You know, I mean, I was completely out of it. So I gave up my boys to drink and drug. March the 9th of 2020, been up for, I don't know, a week. You know, I mean, it was no big task for me to go for days and days and days, and then I would just crash for I'd wake up and go, what day is it? And it'd been 3 days I'd been in bed, you know, just completely out of it. You know, and during all this stuff, all this drug, I graduated from college, and at graduation, I'd been up for 3 days, and I was so hungover from a cocaine and alcohol binge, and my parents were there, that I was pale and sweating trying to and I passed out. After I got my diploma and sat down, I passed out, you know, and my parents had to come. And they were so proud of me, you know, I graduated. It took me 12 years to get out of college, but, you know, I started in 86 and graduated in 98, but, you know, that was the same way with you know, it was the same way throughout my life that way, but, I don't know where I was going with that, but, back to that, I had been up for many, many days, and our relationship was already infidelity. I mean, when you get into the drug world I was in, it's a whole nother life. I mean, bizarre life. It's like you wake up from a nightmare and you think about what you had done and we were doing, and it was, you know, hotels and the people, and, you know, it was crazy. But she walked out in the garage and was already mad at me and we were in a big fight, and she said something to me, and I came in that garage into that house, and her daughter was already on the phone calling the police, and I told them they couldn't leave the house. Then they did, and I chased them out the front door, and I was never, there's one thing I'll say, I mean, you know, it was probably abusive in what I allowed to happen to us as a couple, but not physically abusive, maybe verbally. I mean, you know, I don't know, but again, this is any of my other, this was the pinnacle, this was the rock hitting the bottom. When I came out of that door, I think there were probably 7 or 8 police officers, and I mean, I just took them out. I came out of that door, and I was swinging, and, you know, we went down, and, you know, I mean, I was almost uncontrollable. And I got arrested, and that was on March the 9th, 2020. Called a lot of charges, a lot of bad charges. And that week was when COVID hit. So I was in Hall County Jail on March the 9th. Woke up on March the 10th. That's why I call that my sobriety date, because I came to on March the 10th. But it took me, anyway. And so COVID hit, so they shut the Hall County court systems down. I couldn't get a hearing. I couldn't get anything. And, God does for me what I can't do for myself. I mean, I'm just telling you right now, because the worst day of my life was when I woke up in that jail with that drip dropping on that top, no underwear, no nothing, not knowing why I was there, what I had done, and really just freaking out. I didn't even, these guys in jail and stuff have these little cards with all the numbers on them. They know how to call people, and I didn't know how to call anybody. I was like, so it was 2 weeks before I even got a phone call to somebody, and that was a bondsman, and they wouldn't provide me a bond. I was there for 217 days. I went to jail on March the 9th, and I didn't get out until October. While I was there, knew that I was at my bottom. I was in a 4-man cell. We were on 23-hour lockdown because it was COVID. And I remember getting down on my knees in front of the three inmates with me there and just crying like a baby. God, please, and I'll say for the first time in this program, it's when I truly, truly gave myself over to a power greater than myself in jail. And I got one meeting, and they brought in 164 pages of Alcoholics Anonymous and a celebration recovery book, and I had a Bible, and those 217 days brought me back to God. My boys wouldn't take a phone call from me. Nobody would take a phone call from me. I started writing them letters every week. I wrote letters to them every single week, and after 3 months, they took a phone call, and they told me they hated me. They said, "We hate you, Dad. You left us for whatever. You left us." And I said, "I know." And for those next 7 months, we built a relationship on the phone. And when I got out, I knew where to go. I needed to go see Tim at the Hawk Club. I had rebuilt a relationship somewhat with my boys, because if I had been let out on that weekend, if I'd been let out, if I'd bonded out, I'd be dead. And I certainly couldn't have proven to my kids. I mean, God did for me. He arrested me and gave me time in that jail to focus on myself and to just get clear-headed enough to get out and realize that I didn't want to drink and drug anymore. And I'll tell you, the obsession to drink and use was removed from me that night when I got on my knees and asked God. I know about spiritual awakenings. I know about spiritual experiences. I know about educational varieties. But for me, this time, and I've been doing it since '89, God took the obsession to drink and use away from me. In my life today, from that chaos, that insanity, that conning, that lying, that stealing, that cheating, that identity, I still have days searching for who I am, but I'm a father. I'm a recovering alcoholic and a good father to my boys, and I'm a productive person in society. I mean, I'm a guy that you can trust today. I mean, people give me their keys and let me in their house and trust me with their money. And this program has saved my life. I mean, without Alcoholics Anonymous, I don't know, because it's not only kept me from drinking and using, but it's given me a set of skills to apply in all my affairs in all of my life. Everything that I need to figure out an answer to, I can find it in the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous. You people have given me an opportunity to be sober. I heard there was a lot of Zoom meetings going on during COVID. I was in jail. When I got out, I was able to be face to face, because you put me behind the camera, man, I'm on something. If you can't see me, I'm going to be doing something on the side, or, I need to have human contact. I need you to look me in the eye and be able to say, "Something's up with you, man. You feeling okay?" Because, and a lot of people get sober. I'm not downing Zoom. It serves its purpose. But for me, I need to be here in this room with all of you and listen to your experience, strength, and hope, and share mine. And I'm just blessed today, one, to be alive. I had a couple of, near deaths with overdoses. Thank God that I quit before fentanyl got out there, because it's killing us right now. I mean, it's killing us. It's killing us, all of us, and that use that type of drugs. And I know I was all over the place. I haven't done this in a while, but I love being here, and I know it's done for me tonight what I couldn't do for myself. So I appreciate you putting up with me, and thanks for letting me share.
Thank you for sharing your story once again. I can really relate to a lot of it. Well, it's just not been quite 7 years for me yet, though. Thank you again. We've asked Misty to come up and hand out the chips, please.
Hey, my name is Misty. I'm an alcoholic. Here at NABA, we have a chip system to help merge time in your recovery. The first one we offer is the white chip. You know, if you're just coming back from a relapse, just coming in for the first time, whatever the case may be, the white chip. Anybody want one? Come on. Any other white ones? What about 30 days? Anybody got 30 days? Anybody got 60 days? Anybody got 90 days? What about 6 months? 9 months? What about a year or multiple?
Hey, I'm Donna, and I'm a caller.
Hey, Donna.
And this is 22 years. This has become one of my favorite meetings. I really enjoy coming and hearing the stories, and I appreciate your story tonight. Today, actually, I came to the 11 o'clock, which is my home group, and we did step 12, which is having spiritual awakening. A lot of your story was about having spiritual awakening. I really appreciate that. And I think just practicing the principles in all our affairs, and I can see having a spiritual awakening just in everybody here and just carrying this message. And that's what you did tonight, was carry the message, just doing service work, and I think you did that tonight. And I just really enjoy these meetings, and AA saved my life too, and I can't say enough about it. So thanks everybody.
Hi everybody, I'm Kelly, alcoholic. My sobriety date is September 7th, 2005, so this is 19. And I always pick up a chip here at NABA. You know, I did a lot of my early recovery in here, and it means so much to me. You know, and a lot of what you talked about today, and thank you so much for telling your story, you know, I could relate to, and God does do for us what we can't do for ourselves. You know, when I first came in, it was just a miracle, you know, that I even made it into this. You know, this was a second time out thing for me. You know, at these times I get to really remember all of that. And, you know, just stick around long enough to start seeing what those miracles are. You know, because sometimes when we first come in, we don't realize what that is. You know, in retrospect, we can see it just really happening in our lives. And I met a young lady tonight who's got 5 months today, and you know, is just really feeling good about her sobriety, and, you know, keep coming back.
First I slept, and then I crept to a hope-filled dream. You rescued me, and finally waking there I see. I look into love's window for a soul that's meant for me. Takes me where the promises are written. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slow, we get just what we need. On on a broad highway, stride for stride, we walk eternally. Look into love's window, for a heart that beats for me, takes me where the promises are real. And I always long for something that sets me free. And I'd arrive to a world in harmony. See love as a vision that one day would appear to me. Take me where the promises are